Hi PC fans, I'm the PC Expert Amateur, and this is episode 4, or part 4, whatever you want to call it, of my building an AMD PC series. And in this episode, we're going to be installing the power supply, which is my refurbished Corsair RM850x. My original one went bad, and Corsair sent me a refurbished replacement. Because, why would they send a brand new one? Anyways, so I've got that, and hopefully all the cables are in here. Nothing's missing. And there it is. It looks so nice, I guess. Interestingly, it does have this sticker on the back, silent operation at low to moderate loads. In this mode, the fan will not spin. So it must be... let me get that off. Okay, that's interesting. I don't know why they put that there. There's no mode switch on here. So anyways, that is it. And it's really easy to install. The hard part will be connecting the cables, which there are so many, to that thing. But it's not that hard. So we'll do it step by step together, just to make sure everything goes well. Now, as I pointed out last time, in the previous part of the series, this is the mounting plate for the power supply. And it also happens to, this is where you put the power supply in, which is, honestly, if you have never built a PC before, just take my word on it when I say that being able to slide your power supply through here is almost a blessing. It's so much easier than having to force it through this gap over here. So if you can get a case that allows rear entry, so to speak, that is what you're going to look for. Now, the one thing you want to do when you put this mounting plate on is you want to make sure that you've got the fan oriented the right way, and you want to have all the ports accessible. So the ports should be facing, depending on the model, most power supplies, the ports are on the far end. But on some power supplies, it'll be on the side. And that's another way you can, you can deal with some of the cabling problems that come up. A side the one with the ports on the side makes it easier to plug things in. Because I'll tell you what, when you've got this in here, especially if it's not mounted through the back like that, adding more cables is extremely challenging. It's frustrating. But with this, all you have to do is take this off, and then you can slide this out enough so that it's easy to attach another cable. And it's so much nicer. That was one of the drawbacks with my Corsair case that I started out with. So what we need to do now is we need to mount this plate to the power supply. So what you're going to want to do is, you'll notice there are, in this case, 4 elongated bolt holes. You're going to want to align those with the 4 holes on your power supply. Some power supplies may have more, but generally speaking, 4 is enough. And then you're going to want to dig into your selection of bolts that came with either the power supply or the case or the motherboard. Most likely it's going to be in the case, but you never can tell. And you're going to want to use those to screw the plate in place. So let's go ahead and get that done with. Okay, so for power supply, we're going to use one of the most common type of bolts, and this one has a hex head on it. It's also usable with a Phillips screwdriver, so take your pick which one you want to use. And it's got kind of medium threading as far as the distance, although I don't know what the actual distance is. That's what it looks like. So we need to just screw these in place. And what again, as always, I recommend that you do not fully tighten any of the bolts until all the bolts are on and you've got the plate positioned exactly as you want it, just to make sure that you don't have to tighten all the bolts up so that you can reposition the plate so that things will fit. Because in my experience, whether you're working on a car or you're working on, say, I don't know, a computer, there are these chances that there is the chance always. I mean, oh my gosh, this one hole, it seems to be something wrong with it, because these bolts are brand new, never used. So I don't know what the heck is going on with that. And since this is a refurbished power supply that they sent me, it seems to me they didn't verify that none of the bolt holes were stripped. So I'm going to try to just, man, it is a little bit awkward. Anyways, what I want to do now before I fully tighten any of these is I want to see how this fits in here. And to best do that, I'm going to tighten up these thumb screws. Now, on many power supplies, but not all power supplies, you will notice that there are rubber feet that help to provide support for the opposite end of the power supply that's sitting in the middle here that you can't see right now. And not all power supplies have that. Sometimes there's support in the case itself, on the floor of the case power supply area, and sometimes not. But please, again, make sure that when you've installed this, before you tighten everything down, you should see the label up if the case has the power supply on the bottom. If it's in a different position, say on the top, then most likely the fan will have to face upward. If the power supply will be vertically oriented, then it'll be facing toward wherever the nearest vents are. Hopefully not blowing hot air back into the computer. So make sure you pay attention to that. So now that I've got this positioned, I can tighten up each one of these. We'll want to have them nice and tight, just to make sure that nothing bad happens. You don't have to torque it down a lot. And this will make it substantially heavier. I don't know which is heavier, that bay or that array of bays of for drives, or the power supply, but both are heavy. So now that we've got that in here, we are going to get some of the cables out. And from experience, I know that we're going to probably need one or two of the SATA cables. And since I know I need to power the hub, there's one right there. We'll need the power cable, which is like this. And the SATA cable, sorry I didn't show you. The SATA cable looks like this on one side, and it looks like this on the other. Excuse me. I'm just going to put these over here. Let's see. And then this is the main power cable for the computer. And that is going to be plugged into here. Now, so we'll need that. And that also is SATA. This is Molex D. I hate Molex D. It is one of the most, oh my God, I hate it when it focuses on my face when I want it to focus on what's nearby. Molex D has connectors that wobble and wiggle inside of the holder. The nice thing about this particular type is that in order to remove it, all you have to do is push down or squeeze, and you can pull these out. But getting this connected correctly is always a challenge. And on the other end, it looks like that. Now, I don't have any intention at this time of plugging in anything that needs Molex D, so I'm going to set this one aside and get the rest of the cables, because we might need something else. All right. This one, we will need, let's see, a CPU. So there are dedicated cables for the CPU, and that's what we have here. Now, there are two headers for CPUs, and I always recommend connecting both of them. Okay, so find both of those, and they are marked CPU on them, just like that. So I'm going to take, that's one, and that's two. And then we've got, let's see, what else have we got here? Another SATA, another SATA. This is another CPU, which we won't need necessarily, but I'll set it aside just in case. And another Molex D, which we won't need at all. So I've got two PCIe, and I've got three CPU. Now, the PCIe are what we're going to use for powering the graphics card. Now, depending on the graphics card, you may need one or you may need two. The extra CPU cable I'm going to set back in the box. And for now at least, I'm going to take the rest of these SATA cables and I'm going to put them in the box too, because at this time I don't foresee needing them. Doesn't mean in the future I won't need them, but you're going to have to look at the stuff that you're installing to see what you are going to want to add. So there are two ways you can handle adding on the cables. Now you can do it like this. I guarantee you it's going to be kind of challenging, because the farther back it is, the harder it is going to be to reach it and to align those with the holes on the side there, and correctly oriented, because all of these have a lock on them. You can see that lock there, that thing right there where my finger is. See, that's a lock. And so, yes, you can do it this way. However, personally, I recommend make it easy on yourself. I know that sounds kind of crazy. Why should I make anything easy? Well, because in my experience, if you can make something easier, you're probably going to be less irritated and aggravated and give up on what you're doing. So we need to plug in everything. Now, on this one, the motherboard cable is going to be plugged in here. And here we've got PCIe and CPU. Here we've got SATA and PATA. PATA is an older form for solid state drives and hard drives that isn't really much used anymore. And then SATA and PATA up here, as well as another PCIe CPU. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 PCIe and CPU. And we're going to only need 1, 2, 3, 4. So that leaves us with one more PCIe or CPU cable position available for something else in the future if needed. Probably aren't going to need it though, at least for me. And then of course one SATA. So At this point, if you're doing it this way with the power supply out, it doesn't really matter what order you plug them in. Now, I would suggest that you can try connecting all of these with them still tied up like this, and then you can push this all through as a big bunch, and then you can detach the cable ties and stretch everything out. However, if you find that's difficult, just remove all the cable ties ahead of time, and then you can just grab all of the cables as a big bunch and from here, and then pull that through as you're slowly adding the power supply in, and that will make it a smooth transition as well. If you really want to try the challenge of doing this with the power supply installed, my suggestion is you start by installing cables on this end first. So you're going to do your SATA, your PCIe, SATA first, then you're going to do your PCIe and CPU, and if you got a need, the MolXD would go into the PCIe, I believe, and then you can do the rest of the PCIe. But I actually, honestly, I would say that rather than using these three PCIe first, I would say put the motherboard cable here in first, and then you can do these. Why? Because the shroud, the top of the power supply area, is going to be over it like this, and it's easier to reach these when these are not plugged in yet. I'm speaking from experience. So again, start up here, then go down here, then do this, then do this. Okay? In fact, just for the sake of educational purposes, I will follow that plan for this video. So we're going to take our SATA cable, and I'm going to plug it in this way. It should plug in very, very easily. Plug it in and push until it locks into place. You'll know that it locks into place when you pull on the plug, not on the cable, and it won't come out. But make sure not to accidentally squeeze the lock while you're doing it like I just did. It should lock into place. So now I'm not squeezing it, and there we go. Also, if you have power supply cables from a different power supply, you cannot use it with this side. Because while all of the ports on the other side, let me give some more light there, are going to be standard on the motherboard and on any cards you're going to connect to or hard drives or whatever, on this side, they're non-standard. Even within one company or one brand, not all of them will have the same kind of pinout, which is where each wire is connected to. So you can actually destroy things by mixing in cables from a different power supply. So please do not mix and match. And if you decide you want to buy custom power supply cables, you must ensure that they are made for the exact power supply that you have. If you have to remove this power supply because it's damaged, it must be replaced. You cannot use those cables from the old power supply with the new one. You have to take the cables out with the power supply. It's a package deal, baby. This is called a modular power supply. A modular power supply allows you to only connect the cables that you will need to use. A semi-modular has some of them as being removable, like with these ports, and others, especially the motherboard ones, that for the power for the motherboard, the power for the CPU, those will typically be permanently installed. And a non-modular one, all of the cables will be permanently installed, which means it's going to take up a lot of space. So if you've got a small case, make sure you get a fully modular power supply. Also, The advantage of having modular ports is if a cable goes bad for whatever reason, it's very easy to replace the damaged cables. If a non-modular cable goes bad, the chances are you're not going to be able to find somebody to fix it, and you'll have to buy a new power supply. So the negatives of modular ports is that if they are not well made, so the tolerances are small, that is, the wiggle space is small, you can have loose connections. Okay, and that is bad. So if you happen to buy a power supply and you notice that the cables sit in there loosely, or the cables sit loosely in the motherboard or the graphics card or what have you, that means you've got a poor quality power supply. Okay, so I've got the SATA cable in here. Now I'm going to do, let's see, I'm going to do the PCIe. Now, I wanted to point out that you'll notice this side has 8 and this has 6 plus 2. This side is the side that goes to the motherboard or to the graphics card or whatever. This is the side that gets plugged into the power supply. Why? Because these are 8. Now, could you do it in the opposite direction? To be quite frank, I think so, but I won't bet my life on it. The nice thing about having this 6 plus 2 is if your device only has 6, you can still plug it in. But if you have 8 on that side and 8 on this side, as far as I know, it doesn't make any difference. Now, there may be exceptions to that rule, but if you're going to use this on this side, which I'm actually going to do, please keep in mind 2 things. Number 1, it is not marked on this side that it's PCIe. The 8-pin one is not marked PCIe. Only the 6 plus 2 is marked PCIe. So keep that in mind and make sure you don't plug this into the wrong thing. So when you use all 8 of these, what you want to do is you'll notice that on this one, and this is going to be a little bit difficult to see, you see those 2 things sticking up on the end there, like right here? Those actually sit just in place with the ridge that you see on either side of this one. So you see that ridge there, and then you see there's another ridge here. Those kind of mate together. Like, it's a little bit awkward, but if you're not sure, when you look, you'll see that the lock is not perfectly oriented in the middle. So whichever side has less space, that's the side where this is going to fit in. And so these 2 little knobs sit on top of the ridge, and you put it together, and it should look just like that. And I hate it that it's catching my face and not focusing on this. So you see it looks just like that. And now you can see that it looks like the lock is in the very middle there. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. All right, well, this is the big test to see if doing it in reverse actually works. And guess what? It doesn't work, because this side is not identical to the other side. So you will have to use the 8. Also, I do want you to notice there are actually 2 of the 6 plus 2s on pretty much all. This is actually making it harder for you to see. The reason for this is some power supplies don't have enough ports to connect all of these kind of cables that you're going to need. So you may run out. So the solution they've come up with is to have a pigtail or an extra one. And this is the primary, this is the secondary. You want to connect, if you can use both cables, like I'm going to use, you want to use both. You do not want to use the secondary. Why? Because if there's too much draw from whatever this is connected to between the primary and the secondary, it can damage the cable. And that can end up damaging other things. So it's always better to use two. Now, there are some situations where you can get by with graphics card only using one. I've been told, that if you're not going to do overclocking or anything really serious, you don't need to use two of these. I don't know if that's actually accurate, so I always play it safe, and I always use both if that is what is needed. For better or for worse, the Battlemage only has one connection, which is because it is not a high-power device. So I don't actually need to use both of these. I'm going to put away the extra one, which is fine. I'm happy about that. And I'm going to get this one plugged in now. So before you start plugging in stuff, make sure how many you actually need so you don't waste your time. Just set that aside. And we're going to get the 8-pin one. And we're going to plug it in right up here. Just like that. And again, you want to push until it won't come out. And remember, don't accidentally push the lock because then it'll come back out. But if you can pull it out without touching the lock, there's something wrong. You either didn't push it in far enough or there's something wrong with the lock. Okay, now that we've got that done, we can go ahead and work on adding the CPU cables. Now, the CPU cables, in this particular case, are 8 each also. There are some CPU cables that have got, like the PCIe cables, it's 6+2. That one uses 6+2 for the CPU cables, and that actually worked out fine because of the number of things that are available. That one, that motherboard actually has fewer than 16. So I believe it only has 14. So you need to also keep that in mind, that you may have to make sure that you've got a cable that will work with your motherboard, and it may not work with your motherboard, in which case you're going to have to find out if you can use a PCI cable in its place, or if you're going to have to contact the power supply manufacturer. Better yet, make sure you know in advance for when you order the power supply. What do you order first? CPU and motherboard. Then you can get the RAM and the SSDs and the power supply. Case is something that you want to consider last, because you have to remember that whatever you're putting in, you have to have enough space. So if you buy your case and then you want to put stuff in and there's no space, you're screwed. So make sure you do everything else first before you buy the case. At least find out how much space you're going to need, at least in an estimate. So we're going to take these, and again, there's no marking on this side. This side is marked with CPU. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to, and I'm going to continue to use the ones that are the most on this side, because if later on I have to plug in things, if I've got these filled up, it's going to be a pain in the butt to reach these. So I'm going to use these first. Lock side, the bottom row of the lock side is typically down, although there are exceptions to that rule. And make sure I get the right side. By the way, these should initially slide in very, very easily. If you're experiencing resistance, that's one or two things. One, you've got it positioned so it's not actually, the poles are not actually matching the holes. Or two, You could actually have it reversed, which is kind of the same thing. But the other possibility is you're trying to plug it into the wrong place. So now I've got my two CPU cables plugged in, and that leaves us with a the motherboard one. I've got the two empty CPU ones over here. I've got the SATA ones that are unfortunately kind of a little bit blocked, but at least because I did the top one first, it's going to be easier to reach these than to try to reach these on the top. So filling from the left, looking at it this way, filling from the left to the right, top to the bottom is always the best choice, at least in my experience. All right, now you'll notice this has two sides. It has two piece and one piece. This is for the power supply side. This is for the motherboard side. You will sometimes see motherboard cables that are different, where this side will have two pieces also. This side may not have two pieces. There are different variations out there. So just pay attention to that. And unlike the other ones, these are not stamped with motherboard on them or MB or anything like that. Make sure your locks are facing upward. I'm going to do the left-hand one first. Plugging that in. Got it. I heard the snap of the lock. And, oops, that's not in. Okay, there we go. I saw the lock snap into place. Yep, definitely plugged in. So that's what that looks like now. And I'm going to try, usually I remove the cable ties, but I'm just kind of curious since I've never done it this way. I'm going to see if this will actually be efficient or effective. To do it this way. So I've got a hold of all of them. I have a big hand, so that is an advantage that I have that you may not have. So keep that in mind. I'm going to say that honestly, based on what I'm experiencing right now, it's easier to just untie all of these because I'm having the cables getting caught on the edges of the hole. And now I've got to find all the cable ties and remove them. So I'm going to say, just for your benefit, that you should just remove the cable ties first. So let me do that. Okay, I've got all of them untied. Save your cable ties. Put them back in the box. Keep them somewhere. You may need them to, when you're done, to tidy up these cables, especially since they generally will match the color of the cables. Or you'll have to buy something else to do that with. So as you can see, that was much easier. It just slides in there very, very nicely. And like I said, trying it the other way, that was the first and the last time that I've ever done that. So now I've got this plugged in here. And now we can see all the cables are ready to be connected to their respective places. So let's go ahead and we'll at least get a little start on that. Now, since I've got this hub over here, I want to connect that up. Now, these SATA cables, the connector is kind of an L-shaped hole here, and on the other side, on this side, it'll be an L-shaped kind of flat thing with fingers. If you look at it with a flashlight, you can see that the fingers are on this side. And if you look at this one, you can see no fingers on this side. Hopefully you can see that. Turn this back on. And you can hopefully see fingers on that side. So you're going to want to match them like that because then the L is automatically matched. I don't think you can see it very well, but right there is the leg sticking out of the L. I'm going to use the one that's closest because I find that convenient. And push it in until you hear a little bit of a snap. And then I'm just going to tuck this one out of the way because I don't need it anymore. I don't have any other SATA devices at this time that I need to connect. So now I'm going to sort these out. Here is the motherboard cable, and I need to go through here to connect this. Now make sure that this is out of the way. You don't want to cause any damage to this. So I'm going to just move that down like that. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm not pulling too hard or anything like that. And this is not going to be going into this channel here because there are already too many cables and this is very thick. So one way or the other, I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to snake this through here. And I'm going to be using these Velcro ties to do this. And these Velcro ties are a little bit awkward, but because they've got a hole that you have to slide it through. But trust me, they can be very helpful as long as it doesn't create a bundle that's just too thick. So I've got these in here. And then you want to look at where the lock is on the connector here. So on this particular model, the locking piece is on this side. And that's the easiest way to know how to connect the cable over here. So you want to make sure that when you're pushing this through, since the locking thing is on this side, you want to have the lock facing the same direction so that when you turn this around, the lock will be in the correct position. As you can see, there it is. So we're going to put it like this, and hopefully the grommet stayed in place. Better than the ones on my Corsair case. Oh, that was so annoying. Every time I pushed a cable through, the grommet would start coming off. All right, so now, again, you do not want to force a very tight connection here. If you're really anal about it, you can buy a right turn or even a U-turn that plugs into this. I don't have one of this size, but I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so this is a 90-degree connector. So you would plug in the top part here into the motherboard, and the bottom part would connect to the cable. And here you can see a U-turn or a 180 degree. If you're going to search for these, you search for motherboard power cable. Oh, crap. Didn't mean to open that. You search for motherboard power cable 90-degree adapter or 180-degree adapter. Now with this particular example, which for some reason, oh, there it is. This side here is connecting into your motherboard. This side will connect to the cable. So if you're just really, really OCD about this stuff, get one of those. If you don't, then you're going to be doing what I'm doing. And that is simply to plug it in. And make sure you're holding on to the back of the case. And this one will provide some resistance. So keep that in mind. And again, it should lock into place. Although you may not hear it. If you pull away, yeah, this one's definitely locked into place there. So that's how you do that. So let's go back to the other side. And we need to get the two CPU cables right here. And again, I'm going to work these around some of the other cables so that they have enough slack. And by the way, if you ever buy an EATX case, which is a very large case, you may need special cables. And again, you're going to try to orient the locks correctly. Now in this, so we're going to be connecting to these two. These are both 8-pin. So they're going to come right through here where my finger is. And the locks are on the top again. So we want to make sure that the locks come through facing downward. And I'm just going to twine these two together with each other just to make it a little bit neater. At least trying to anyways. And be careful about any other cables that are already coming through. And I'm going to take the one on the left and just turn it over. And I'm going to take the one on the right, plug that in because the heatsink is there. So you're going to want to adjust your strategy based on where you've got less space. Do that one first. And there we go. It just locked into place. I heard it. And this one got turned around, so we will have to reorient the lock. And come on. Sometimes the lock is not going to want to cooperate. So I'm trying to orient it a different way, which should work better. And yep, there we go. So that is now installed. You can pull a bit, but just don't pull too much. Same with this one. You can pull some, but not too much. You can buy sleeves to cover this. You can buy the adapters. There are other ways to conceal these things. So that's done. I know it still looks like a mess, but I'm going to tidy up the cables eventually. What I'll probably do is, this one's going to be a pain in the butt because there's no way for me to run it back behind the motherboard, down, and then back out through this way. So I may just have to tidy that up and conceal the excess, like maybe right here. We'll have to see once the cards are in place. So that's done. Now, the last step, once it's installed, will be to do the graphics card connection. But that's going to come in a minute. And, oh, darn it, I forgot. So, I'm not going to tidy this up yet because, well, number one, I may need to use this channel for something else than just these three cables. But as you can see, I've got these two wrapped around each other. Just makes it easier to control them as a pair. And that just leaves the graphics card, which will cable, which will probably be going through this one here. And that is about it for the moment. Now, I do want to point something out, that the grommet here and here, you can see that the motherboard partially covers it. Is that a big deal? Sometimes. And I found out the hard way that sometimes you can accidentally damage things, like you're trying to push if you've got SATA plugged in over here, or you've got something plugged into here that's kind of fragile, and you've got to push another cable through, unplug that thing. Let it just take it out or let it hang there, because what I accidentally destroyed a SATA connection on my motherboard because I was moving a cable through and it caught, and it pulled the housing for the SATA header off. So that was really frustrating. Fortunately, my motherboard has lots of SATA connections, and I barely use SATA at all, so it didn't matter to me. Also, when you're going to connect SATA to your motherboard for like a SATA SSD or something like that, or hard drive, please make sure that you're not choosing one that is sharing lanes on the motherboard, or circuits is another way of saying it, so that you're not having a conflict that's going to slow down two things or maybe make one thing not work. So check your bifurcation documentation, which generally is not going to be in the manual if there is one included, or you look online. You have to generally look on the manufacturer's website for the motherboard, specifically for bifurcation information, which is a fancy way of lane sharing or circuit sharing. And that's usually, and that lane sharing is typically between the CPU and a couple of things, like maybe the graphics card and some SATA lanes, or some of the PCIe lanes, or the SSD lanes, or whatever. So you have to be careful about that. All right. So, and that's true of Intel as well. Now for these, again, because of the way they've oriented this, unless I want to, and I don't want to turn it around, because if I turn it around, then I can't easily plug this cable in to the header for the CPU fan. So I'm just going to have to be clever eventually about tidying this up. It's not a big deal to me, but it may be to you. So yeah. Now we're going to work on our graphics card. So for the moment, I'm going to put this down, and you can still see, although not as well. So let me try to move the camera. Now, there are various configurations for graphics cards as far as length, but also thickness. There are some graphics cards that only take up one of these slot holes, some that'll take 2, 2.5, 3, and I think there are some that actually take 4. So you're going to want to, number one, don't touch the golden fingers, but you're going to want to kind of eyeball this, move cables out of the way or unplug them if you need to, and see, and you can use this as a really good guide. 1, 2. Oh, sorry, that's better. So you got 2 here, and that indicates that you're going to be using up 2 of these slot holes. So what you're going to want to do then is set this aside so you don't accidentally knock it down or damage it, and you're going to want to remove these 2 of these things. Now, which ones you need to remove depends on the orientation of the graphics card slot versus the slot holes. So move that cable out of the way. Come on, stay out of the way. Stay out of the way. There we go. And I'm just going to very gently orient this over the slot. I'm not putting it in at this time. And we can see, hopefully you can see, but actually this one does not need to be removed. I need to remove the second and the third one. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So let me get this out of the way again. Okay. So this is the second one. Now this is the same kind of bolt almost as the one for the power supply, but a little bit different. And that's what that one looks like. Almost the same, right? Okay. And if you're noticing some distortion on the video, it's because I've got the camera perched on my extra light source here. So now we're going to take these out. Now on cheap cases, and when I say cheap, I mean inexpensive cases, often the slot hole covers are permanently, well, not permanently, but they're made from the same piece of sheet metal, and they've just been cut so that all you have to do is loosen up one end and then wiggle it so that the metal becomes fatigued at the minor connection on the other end, and then it'll come off and then you can't reuse it. The nice thing about these is if you ever get rid of the card or whatever that was there, you can always close them back up by reinstalling these. Otherwise, set these aside. I tend to put all of my spare parts that are not too large into my motherboard box and hold on to that motherboard box. So it's easy to find anything that I need. So I'm going to just put these over here for now. And you'll notice here there is some kind of a goofy thing. Let me see if I can show it to you better. Oops. Let me take that off. It's just going to get in the way. So this is the locking mechanism. And different motherboards now have different locking mechanisms. Some of them are very sophisticated. Most of them are quite simple, like this one. And when you push the card down into the slot, what happens is there's a tab that sticks out here on the graphics card, and it catches the lock and puts the lock in the up position. So when you're going to remove this, you will need something long and thin that you can reach that with easily on one side or the other and push it open again. Because if you try to remove the graphics card without unlocking this, one of two things is going to happen. One, this is going to come off with the card. Two, you're going to break the tab off the graphics card, and then you can never lock it in place again. And worst case scenario, you'll crack the card and it'll be useless or hard to repair, and you'd have to find a repair person who's going to charge a lot of money. So let's go ahead and effect the installation now. And I said effect, not effect. It's kind of a weird way of saying do it. Okay, you're gonna, and I don't know if you could, how well you heard it, but there was a kind of a click sound. That was the lock moving up, having been pushed down by the tab. So we want to just make sure that's firmly seated. Press, but not too hard. And here we can see that the power connector is available. So I'm going to get that cable now, and we're going to come through, like I said, through the bottom grommet here. And actually, I'm going to do a little thing with the cable here so that that's going to keep that from going back and getting in the way again while I bring this out. Now you can use this one. That's perfectly fine to use the, here, let me give you a better view. That's as far over as I can get it. You can use this. You're going to need these bolts, by the way, so don't get rid of those with the covers. You can use this one if in that way, because if you use the primary one, the problem with this is now you're going to have to twist tie or cable tie or zip tie or some kind of tie, ziplock. Oh my God. You're going to have some kind of a strap here to keep these together. But if you don't want to see a really thick cable coming in here, what you can do instead is just take the secondary one and connect it. And again, you're going to align those little prongs on the side where, and this is an opportune moment to show you better. So the prongs are there. I don't know why they have this installed so weirdly, but prongs are there. So you're going to align it like that. So you can see the prongs. I'm going to slide them into place. And then you're going to have to hold it. And you're going to look for where the lock is on this. And you can see there's PCB right here. That's what that kind of greenish thing is. On this side is the lock. So we're going to go like this. Now, you could install the 2x3 first and then the 1x2 after that. That would also work. I'm a little bit worried about this, but that's why you saved your bolts. So now we're going to use our screwdriver. I can shorten this. And again, magnetized for your pleasure. Ease of use. And there. And we're going to get that down there. We don't want okay, and that is done. Now all we've got to do is get this one, and try not to misthread them. If you're feeling a lot of resistance initially, you've misthreaded it, unless you've got like a used case, in which case it may be the case's holes are stripped or whatever. But now this is firmly and not attached, and it's not going to move. Now, one of the problems with graphics card, especially graphics cards that are longer and heavier, is this end will over time start sagging downward, and that is why you're going to want to use some kind of an anti-sag device. And as I noted last time, this particular case comes with this. So what I want to do here is figure out the best way to get this attached. So I'm going to have to adjust in both directions which one I'm going to screw into, which of these holes, because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Here, let me show you. For this particular one, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm also going to have to slide, so I need to figure that out. But first, I also want to adjust this a little bit and just make it a little bit loose. And we can see that this is indeed going to be a little bit of a challenge, because there is a fan right here. I don't want this colliding with the blades of the fan, so I have to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I want it to be approximately like this, and that means, ooh, this is a little bit awkward. Oh boy. So this one's going to be a little bit less well supported because I'm going to have to use, let me take out the 2 bolts. And it turns out I'm going to have to use these slots here to be able to match. And I'm going to temporarily just clamp this in place so it stops wiggling around. No, maybe a little bit less than that. There. Pros and cons with every kind of graphics card support. Now I can go I can go to the bottom holes and just carefully. Nope, that's kind of binding. So I'm going to extend this. Yeah, that's as far as that's going to go. I do have another extender that I can use, but it's sliding into the hole or spinning into the hole very nicely, so I don't have to worry about that. I did tighten that a little bit too much. I need to leave some slack so that I can slide it into the final positioning. And then, same thing with this one. Now, if you don't have a bracket like this, there are brackets that will sit on top here, and they may have magnets, they may have rubber, and you can use that. There are other kinds. I'll show you those in a minute, but I want to get this finished first. So I'm sliding this as much as I can because I happen to have oh boy, I was afraid this was going to happen. The fans on this card are ring fans, which means that on the outer ends of the blades there is a ring that connects all of the blades to help keep them stable. So this is not going to actually work in this position, which is another good reason I didn't fully tighten it. I'm going to have to, yeah, I can't slide it any further in that direction, which is what I need. So I'm going to have to move the whole thing up to the 3rd pair of holes instead of the 4th pair, which, you know, sometimes that's the way it goes. And now, since I know what I need, and this should work well, But we will make sure, because we do not want to actually prevent that fan from spinning. To be honest, if you've got a well ventilated case, the fans on the graphics card will not turn on all the time, or even often. All right, so now, I don't know how well you can see this. Let me try to show you. You can see, let's see. All right, so you can see right over here where the light is hitting that there is a gap, and then this is the ring fan. So I'm going to loosen that up, and I'm going to tighten it. And if you need to, you can always grab, these usually are thumb screws, so you can always grab your Phillips and give it an extra turn. Don't turn it too much because you don't want to strip the hole at all. It's kind of hard to do with metal, but it is possible if you over torque it. So that is now fully supported. I don't ever have to worry about this sagging. And that's fantastic. Now, do I need to install any other cards? Now, I did promise to show you some types of anti-sag connectors. If you've got holes in the top of your power supply shroud, or the top of the shroud, you can just take like a short pencil, stick the leaded end into the hole, and then as long as it's the exact right height to support the graphics card, you can put a piece of rubber like an eraser that sticks on the end, or if you have a pencil with the eraser still on it, and that'll hold that in place just as well. Or you can get something like this, and this is an adjustable length one, and you can use that to fix that distance like that. And it's got, make sure that if you're going to use something like this, that on both ends there is rubber. There are versions of this that have LEDs in them. Another variation on that one, and you can search for more on my channel because I have some. You just search for anti-sag and they should all pop up. I was trying to find another version, but I don't know where it is right now. I couldn't locate it. But here's another one. It looks a little bit more interesting. And this one has got multiple levels. It's kind of hard to get it going, but so you can have multiple levels, and then this is going to lock the height of this part in place. This part is still adjustable, and that's kind of I think this is kind of an attractive option that you can use. And there are from this particular one, there were two different heights. I think I got the one that was the longer one. There's a shorter one. And there are, like I said, there are variations like this. And for example, here's a simpler one. And this one, if you've got the holes down here in the shroud top, then you can screw this into that, and then this can be used to hold the bottom, just the bottom of the card. Obviously, this one's kind of short, so you can do this, go like this, so that it can be taller. Oh my gosh, a little bit hard to see that hole there. There it is. So anyways, so you can, if you desire, you can have this like this. This is a small one. There are longer ones than this. This is pretty tiny. And it comes with a level. Unfortunately, the level is round, so it'll roll around. It also comes with parts you'll need to connect it to either fans or shroud. So it is kind of multi-purpose. The problem is if you have a case that hasn't got a PSU chamber with a top on it, and it doesn't have holes in the top, then you have an issue there. And then there's other ones that are simple, like this. We're going to take these. This becomes the base that you're going to connect into holes in the, for the fans, and then this goes like this. There's a slot there, and you slide this into that, and this is simultaneously the rod and also the screw that can tighten that up. So once you've got that in place and you've got it where you need it to be, you tighten it up, and then you put this in onto the rod and tighten it up at the correct height, and there's rubber there, so that supports it from just the bottom. So as you can see, some versions or some types have just a bottom support, some are a claw like this, and it comes with the same bolts and also a level so that you can make sure that it's not sagging already. And there are others that are some graphics cards come with their own anti-sag supports, and generally, but not always, I believe, with those, what you will see is that it anchors here and then runs along the edge of the card and supports it all the way across. It'll be a big piece of metal. There are others that you can buy separately. I've got one. I thought I had two different ones, but for some reason I only see one on my channel that connects into here and goes across, and it has an adjustable support, and it also has LEDs built into it. So there are a lot of different kinds of supports for graphics cards, so they don't sag. There are many, many different kinds of cards that you can install in these extra slots. So for example, this one allows you to add another USB 3.0, and it's powered by SATA, and it plugs into the PCIe slot that matches this size. I don't actually have a slot like that that's exactly that size, but you can slide it into a larger slot if that's what you need to do. There are network interface cards for Ethernet, audio cards, SCSI, RAID. There are all kinds of cards out there, adapters and things you can add on, more SSDs or hard drives or PCIe or SATA, or whatever it is you need. If you look, you will find it. Now, I will suggest that you be careful to choose wisely. Another thing that you can get, which we talked about before in the last episode, is this, which drivers, or actually we didn't talk about this specific one. This is, if you need more USB ports, this is USB 2, and you just plug that into the tiny slot here and power it with SATA. It gives you USB 3 header, and it gives you 5 USB 2 ports. So if your motherboard doesn't have enough, there are lots of options. So many options out there. And the only thing that I would caution is number one, obviously, would be to choose correctly. And number two, not so obviously, is beware, not all are the same quality. And then finally, if you decide to not mount the graphics card like this, which is called a horizontal mount, and you decide you want to mount it vertically, there are two things you're going to need, and I'm going to show you both of those. However, do keep in mind that the number and variety of slots that will be available on your motherboard, both for SSDs and for PCIe, will vary depending on which version you buy. So if I bought the best AMD version, which has, for this particular model series, has 1, 2, 3 long slots, and you want to make sure that the graphics card slot actually is as good as the graphics card or better, to make sure you're going to not slow down your graphics card, because that's really important. So check the version of the graphics card as far as the throughput or bandwidth or whatever you want, the speed essentially, and also the PCIe version, to make sure that you're not going to be slowing it down, because there's not a lot of point in having a graphics card if you're just going to be slowing it down. Also, you can consider that if you can't afford a graphics card, you can just use the built-in internal graphics processor in your CPU. It's not going to be as good as a graphics card, but for many purposes, it will be just fine. Honestly, a lot of people, consumers that is, and certainly plenty of businesses, are never going to really need graphics cards unless you're doing really heavy-duty work that involves a lot of graphics or computations of the particular type that are special for that. Now, if you want to mount this vertically, there are two things that you will need, or maybe one, maybe both. Hold on. One option, which is less expensive but won't work for a lot of people, is this. This is a daughter board, right? It's called a riser, and basically this plugs into the slot that you're going to be used for the graphics card, and the graphics card's going to connect to here. Or you can have this plugged into the slot, and then there is a riser cable that goes from here to the thing that's holding the graphics card, the mount for the graphics card itself, if it doesn't already come with the things you need to do this. But this is an option that most people won't be able to use as is, just directly connecting the card to the motherboard that way. You're going to most likely need one of two things. One of them is a very solid kind of vertical mount that will use most, if not all, of these slot covers, or these slot holes here, which means if you don't have any other cards you're planning to install, that's fine. But if you are going to be using other cards, you're going to have to make sure that having that giant thing in there supporting your graphics card vertically is not going to prevent you from using cards that you need to use. So make sure you do that. The alternative is you buy one that fits, that lays on top or sits on top of here. And I happen to have one, which I used during testing for different positioning for what do you call it? When I was testing different positions for fans in a case. And this one comes in several pieces. The bottom parts, they rest like this, and they've got rubber, and under the rubber is magnets. Now, when you place this, if you pick it up, you have to pick it up properly. You can't slide it because the rubber will start coming off. But basically, it's going to go like that. And then this part, you'll have the graphics card connected. This end will connect here. And there are different ones for different graphics cards. This is not a universal, but this part will be connected to here. And the nice thing about this particular model that I've got is, if you notice, there are these curved slots. Those slots match these things here. So you can actually rotate this at different angles. And I found that when you have a graphics card holder such as the one that mounts here, if the fans are too close to the panel here, it's going to prevent enough airflow. When I used this one and I angled it about 45 degrees, I found that it did a great job of keeping the graphics card cool. So I just wanted to let you know about that. And then for the connection to the card, so what you'll have is this. So this end will be attached like this, and the card plugs in here, and then the cable is fairly flexible, not fully flexible, but so you have it like this, and then you'll flex this cable and plug this end in to the card slot for your graphics card. So this is a very nice one. I think it's kind of overpriced, but it's hard to find one. If you have power supply shroud, there aren't very many companies that make this particular kind. Most of them make ones that connect to these slot holes over here. So it's a little bit of a hassle locating it, but if you look around, you'll be able to find what you're looking for. And so at this point, I think I'm just going to leave this horizontally mounted. I will think about the possibility of doing a vertical mount with this particular graphics card holder. But yeah, this is pretty much done now as far as hardware is concerned. I don't have SATA drives that I need to connect. I don't have any other cards that I need to connect. This is ready to go. So all I really need to do is get it connected to the internet and get Windows or Linux installed. I'm thinking about using Linux on this one, actually, partially just because it's free, but also because of security concerns, and it will function better. But I have to make sure that the testing software that I have will still function on Linux or Linux properly. So yeah, so that is it. If you have any questions about any of this, please let me know. Again, you'll have to figure out how to tidy things up. Just be careful where you put cables, because sometimes if you put cables in a certain place, they will pick up stray electrical signals or magnetic signals, and that can cause distortions in sound or audio or other problems. So be careful about where you put your cables. Also, make sure to try to get things out of the way of the airflow. The airflow is going to come from here and go that way, and it's going to get sucked out here. Some of it will probably seep out this way, but most of it's going to come out the back. Make sure that there aren't a lot of cables that are going to impede the airflow, especially going over here to the CPU cooler, because you want this to be able to get lots of cool air sucked down into there. Now, one of the things that I'm not entirely excited about with this is the fact that the graphics card, this fan is going to be pushing air up through this honeycomb grill here, and it's going to be pushing, the fans are going to push this hot air coming up here into the CPU cooler. This side doesn't have that, so I'm not sure, but I guess for this side, air is going to come up here, and it's also going to be going out that way, because there are ventilation holes on the end of the card that's facing outward. But yeah, that's basically all there is to it. So again, comments, questions, concerns, please let me know. I would love to, hear your thoughts and help you if you need any help. There are ways to conceal things. There are accessories you can buy that help to conceal things that you consider to be ugly on your motherboard. If you look around, you can spend your money on those. Some of them are light bars that like are flexible and use that kind of stuff. I have one on my channel if you search for it, decorative lighting. But it's not necessary. It's just one of those things. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that so far this has been informative and helpful for you. Oh, by the way, I'm going to predict that this is DDR5. I'm going to predict that it's going to take time for the first time when I boot this up. It's going to take several minutes before it actually starts functioning. And the reason I say that is that when we have an AMD setup with DDR5 especially, it takes time for the motherboard and the CPU and the RAM to get all in sync with each other and get properly configured. So just keep that in mind. Thank you so much again, and have a great day.